And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host Andrew Johnson. And Johnson, we are down to the final four teams in this year's college basketball season. We went through the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight this past weekend. A crazy Sweet 16 and Elite Eight that we just had this past weekend. And now, this upcoming week, I should say weekend, we will know who will be playing in next week's national championship game next Monday night. We're almost, unfortunately, Johnson, at the end of the college basketball season, but this March Madness tournament has been something off the charts.
Hey Nick, I was told that since there's no Cinderella, this tournament sucks.
You were not the only one who was told that. You
I
were
was
not the only
told
one.
that this tournament sucks. There's no Cinderellas. Oh, I don't care if there's a 9 seed in the Elite Eight. This sucks because High Point didn't make it to the Sweet 16, or like my pick, VCU didn't make it to the Sweet 16. Listen, we had this rant last week, or I had this rant last week of
Yeah.
all the analytics making the game better and stuff like that, and while the analytics may make the games better, let's just go straight into it, Nick. Let's talk about the Sweet 16 and the lack of analytics. And I think we should get this game out of the way. Let's talk about that St. John's Duke game.
Well, did you want to go to the Thursday games first before we get to the Friday games?
All right, we'll go
I
Thursday.
know,
I
I
was
know,
gonna
I
hop
know.
straight into Friday, but
I
let's go to
know.
Thursday.
I know. We gotta at least talk about the games on Thursday before we get to Friday. We can't go ahead of ourselves just yet. I know you want to get that game over with, but I'll try my best to get to these games, and then we can talk about St. John's. That happened this past Friday. So we started off on Thursday. A couple of games to note. You have Arizona beating up on Arkansas 109 to 88. It's been a problem for Arkansas all season. Their defense has really been troublesome. Darius Acuff could only do so much for them offensively, but Arizona is just another level right now, playing both sides of the ball really, really efficiently, offense and defense wise. They move on to the Elite Eight. We'll talk about what happened in their Elite Eight game and who they would play. And they would play the Purdue Boilermakers, who had a little bit of a scare against Texas, if you want to call them the perennial Cinderella, I guess, at this point in the NCAA tournament. They were the highest seed remaining going into the Sweet 16, the 11 seed of Longhorns. From the first four to the Sweet 16, they put up a battle with Purdue, but Purdue gets a last second bucket to just beat Texas by a final of 79 to 77. The Boilermakers surviving and advancing to the Elite Eight to take on Arizona and the 1-2 matchup of the West region. I think a lot of people had that being the case in that West region. Maybe you're looking for Purdue to eventually fall at some point earlier on. That would not be the case. So those two teams would meet on Saturday in the Elite Eight. We'll mention that matchup in a little bit. How about Illinois, Johnson? I know we'll talk about what they've done so far, but they just dominated Houston in this game in the Sweet 16, the South region. Houston, having a home game, this game being played in Houston, Texas, and they just shut them down. The Houston was struggling to score offensively. They only scored 55 points in this game. It was a 10-point win for Illinois. Did not feel like that the way this game transpired. Um, a really tough end for a Houston team that last year was mere seconds away from maybe winning a national championship against Florida. A lot of people, including myself, thought that they would go back to the national championship game this season, being that they had the home environment this time around, and then they would have an opportunity to play maybe a rematch with Duke or a UConn or a Michigan State, and it just didn't happen. They couldn't get their shots going in this game against the Illini. Illinois moves on to the Elite Eight in the South region, and they would take on the Iowa Hawkeyes, the 9-seeded Hawkeyes, after upsetting Florida in their second round matchup. They knock off the 4-seeded Nebraska Cornhuskers, who run comes to an end after winning their first couple of NCAA tournament games in their program's history. Iowa just been an incredible story for them and what they've been doing. Ben McNamara, having an incredible run as the Iowa head coach at this current point in time. Because remember, this man was coaching in D2 a couple years ago, or Ben McCollum, who's not McNamara. I'm thinking of Jerry McNamara. Ben McCollum, excuse me, the coach for the Iowa Hawkeyes, was coaching at Drake last season, got them to the tournament. He was coaching Division II a couple years before that, and he gets Iowa all the way to the Elite Eight and a matchup. Funny enough, Johnson, against another Big Ten opponent in that Elite Eight. That was kind of a theme for this Sweet 16. A lot of Big Ten teams, I should say, were still alive going in to the Sweet 16. Iowa and Illinois advancing, and also Purdue advancing. Nebraska, one of the first teams of the Big Ten to fall on Thursday night. Now, Johnson, let's talk about the St. John's game on Friday.
All right, let's talk about the St. John's game. So when we talk about analytics and why these games are better, if you took a look at the analytics here, Iowa was way better than Nebraska. Arizona was way better than Arkansas, and Purdue was much better than Texas. However, they didn't cover, but they still ended up winning. So 4 for 4 in the analytics on Thursday, which was great. Advanced stats, again, going back to March 1st, when players are healthy, yada, yada, all that jazz explained in the last podcast. But let's talk about St. John's Duke. St. John's, if Caleb Foster was not going to play, was going to be a better team. And if Caleb Foster was playing, then the analytics would point to Duke to win. And that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. Anything that pretty much could have not went St. John's way outside of 3-pointers did not go their way. They struggled to get offensive rebounds, which was their bread and butter all year. They made a bunch of silly fouls, whether you think that they were legitimate fouls or whether you think they were tic-tac fouls that only got called because they're Duke. I'll leave that for the viewer to believe. I'm under the impression that there definitely was a Duke whistle, and 24-8 in free throws doesn't make sense. I don't care what anyone says. 24-8 in free throws doesn't make sense during the course of the entire game. I said it with Kansas. And they did it again with Duke. So where does St. John's go from here? Rick Pitino just signed an extension, so he's going to be here through 2029 and 2030. So that season, he really wants to be here for 1,000 wins. And he originally had 3 years left on his extension, meaning he'd have to average 28 games a year to kind of get that. He's currently, I think, 915 wins, so he'd need 28 wins a season, maybe 29. And that simply is setting the bar way too high. That 4th season makes it a paltry, 22 games a season, 22 wins a season, would get him to that mark. And I would frankly, that's what he deserves. He deserves to get 1,000 wins, and he'd be 77 years old. After that point, you'd have to say he retires at this point. There's no way he would come back after that point. But where does St. John's go for here? They're going to have a lot of turnover. And Duke marched on to the Elite Eight, and we'll get to that after we wrap up the rest of these Sweet 16 games.
Yeah, I think the only notes I have from this game, obviously, as much as I don't like to question Rick Pitino because he's had a tremendous run with St. John's, obviously, and is a great coach in his entire collegiate career, was really Ruben Prey not playing the second half of that game a lot. I think he played maybe a couple minutes.
I agree with you, but this is he said his reason was, okay, yeah, he doesn't know the plays at the 4, which, all right, maybe that's true. He's probably been in 200 practices. It's possible he doesn't know all the plays at the 4. But this is the reality of the situation. Zuby Ejiofor is your rock, and he was making defensive plays. He wasn't really shooting great, but he was still holding down defense.
Right.
Duke only scored 80 points, and this is a team that was regularly scoring 90-plus points a game. They've done it a dozen times, like we have said before. Against high majors, they've cracked 100 a couple times. So this is a team with a high-powered offense. Cam Boozer looked great, but he didn't look like he was this all-ending, this world-eating player. So you can't really take out Zuby Ejiofor. He's making the right plays, even though he's not shooting right. He's making the right plays. He's not getting lost on defense. He's switching. He's making the right passes. He's not turning the ball over. So you really can't take him off. Then you have Bryce Hopkins right next to him at playing. You have Dylan Mitchell right next to him playing power forward, who's 6 of 7. He's also switching on defense. He's making the right plays. So can you really take him out? He's getting rebounds. He's passing the ball nice. Then Bryce Hopkins at small forward. He's also 6 of 7 from the field. He's making the right plays. He's not turning the ball over. So that whole entire front court, who do you bench? It is. Yeah, no, because it wasn't only Ruben Prey that was lights out here. Do you bench the guy who is the heart and soul of that program? The last 2 years, the greatest St. John's player since Ron Artest, in dispute. I mean, you have your D'Angelo Harrisons, you have your Marcus Hattons, your Shamorie Ponds, Julian Champagny, Sir Dominic Pointer, whoever you want to say, DJ Kennedy over the last 25 years. But None of those guys accomplished anything that Zuby did. So yes, they might have points, they might have flashy plays. They could have scored 35 or 40 points in a game. None of them accomplished what Zuby Ejiofor had done. So you don't bench the greatest Johnny over the last 25 years, especially when he's giving you all 100% effort and he's not lost. So what do? Do you slide Bryce Hopkins down to the two,
Yeah,
and you
no,
and you have a lineup of Bryce Hopkins, Dylan Mitchell playing small forward, who's hit 1 3 all year, which was in this game. Then you have Ruben Prey at the 4, then Zuby at the 5. I mean, it could have been possible if Rick had Here's the thing: if Rick had experimented with this lineup, even 2 or 3 times in Big East play, I would have bought into it. Especially with the paltry guard play. The guard play is what lost in this game. You can't say, "Oh, Rick Pitino benches Ruben Prey lost in this game." No, it was the paltry guard play.
no, that wasn't the reason why. I'm not saying that was. The
Oh,
reason.
I'm not saying you did. I see the clowns out there questioning Pitino and stuff like that. And again, it's just a question of the entire front court was playing excellent.
Right.
And they're all guys that were seniors, or in Bryce Hopkins' case, a fifth-year player. So it's not like any of these guys had any more time. Like, if these are the guys you want to rely on, they've come up big all year. Bryce Hopkins probably had the best postseason I've seen in a while. This the way comparing the way he started the year versus the way he ended the year. He was definitely a playoff riser. Zuby Ejiofor was a playoff riser outside of that poor shooting performance. And Dylan Mitchell was killing it too the entire time. So it's just, I know, Ruben Prey, next year, this is your time. I would love to see Ruben Prey come back, and I would love to see him start at center next year for us.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it was just more of of how once he came in, provided an insane spark towards the end of that first half. 4 for 4 from the field, all of them were threes. He was playing good defensively too, but you're right. It's really tough to take out Ejiofor or Hopkins or Mitchell at that point because they all were having monster second halves as well. Really, not much you could do on that part. The difference makers of this game really were Isaiah Evans had an incredible shooting performance, had some insane shots towards the end, and then you mentioned Caleb Foster, who didn't start this game, but first game back from that foot fracture where I think it was 19 days since he had the surgery or something like that.
Yeah, and then afterwards he goes back on the scooter too.
Yeah, 11 second half points was really the difference maker outside of Evans and Boozer. Really was a big reason why Duke won that game. You get John Shire. Without Foster, they don't win that game. He had a monster second half. Was a big reason why Duke was able to hold on in that matchup. So let's look about the rest of the Sweet 16, Johnson. We had 3 other games that same Friday night. You had Alabama and Michigan. Very high scoring first half between these two teams. It has to be expected with this Alabama team. They could shoot at will, can score with will. They're a lot of the top teams of the country. The problem was the second half was not where they could have. They didn't really adjust to it. Offense wasn't really there for them in the second half like it was in the first half. Philbin Jr. could only do so much. He had 35 points in this game. But Michigan, this has been their entire run this tournament so far, if you've noticed. Every first half has been close for this Michigan team outside of their Elite Eight game, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then the second half, they just turn on a switch and look like the Michigan team we've seen all season long. They win 90-77. Big game for Lindenberg, 23-12-7. They move on to the Elite Eight. We'll talk about that Elite Eight matchup in a little bit. You had UConn defeating Michigan State 67-63. UConn was leading this game for the majority of the first half. In the second half, Michigan State made a rally to take the lead. A late three-pointer by Alex Karaban gave UConn a surmountable lead that Michigan State was not able to come back from. The Huskies move on to the Elite Eight to take on Duke, in which was an incredible game that you and I will discuss in a little bit. And then the final Sweet 16 matchup, you had Tennessee knocking off Iowa State 76-62. Rick Barnes and company doing it once again, going to another Elite Eight with the victory over the Cyclones. Cyclones, unfortunately, without Jefferson, still really just were not able to get anything going offensively in the second half after a very close first half. Iowa State's, incredible season does come to an end. And Tennessee, surprisingly, moving on to the Elite Eight for a matchup with Michigan, which I kind of spoiled in a little bit, but we'll talk about that matchup in a little bit. Any thoughts on that, Johnson, before we start talking about the Elite Eight matchups on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Alabama, Michigan for a second here. I thought Alabama was going to keep it close. Again, talking to the analytics here, but Michigan was just otherworldly. And the analytics said that they were a better team, so they should have won. So be it. And UConn, Michigan State. I really thought the analytics had this game closer, but Tarris Reed has been a monster.
Yeah.
Uh, Unheard of. The postseason he's having right now. Really, the guy that was not really when he came in, he was like he was good, right? Because he had just transferred from Michigan to UConn, and he wasn't really a starter on UConn for last year. I think he was sitting behind Samson Johnson, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, so he was a guy that was a six man last year and was one of the better six men. And this year he has had monster NCAA tournament games, and he's put them on his back. So Tarris Reed is having a March to remember for the Huskies, and the plot may thicken in the national championship game. Uh, should we go on? Oh, I mean, we'll talk about that in a second here. And the Iowa State Tennessee game, I mean, Iowa State just completely blew that. Every single analytics said they were way better, and this was a massive upset. So you got a 6 seed and you got a 9 seed in the Elite Eight, but March is dead.
So it be. But
you also had number 2 Houston go down in Houston, but March is dead.
Right. Yeah, it just came down to bad shooting performances for a couple of those teams in the Sweet 16. And then you go into the Elite Eight, which started off on Saturday. The first matchup you had Purdue and Arizona. Again, pretty much somewhat similar to what I've been talking about with Michigan before, where the first half was maybe not what they were hoping for, and those second half adjustments were just all there for Michigan for the most part of this tournament. That was there for Arizona in this game against Purdue. They were down by 7 going into halftime. They adjusted really, really strongly on the defensive side. They outscored Purdue by 22 points in the second half of this game. Koa P with another 20-point game. 79-64 the final in this matchup. Arizona going back to the Final Four for the first time since 2001. It's crazy to think that it's been that long for the Wildcats, but they are going to the Final Four. A very intriguing matchup that they have in the Final Four, which we'll break down in a little bit's time. But any thoughts on this game, Johnson, before I move on to the next one?
Yeah, this was a Purdue team that was the number 1 team in the country in the offseason going into the regular season, and this was a 30-win Purdue team. That's crazy. 30-9 to be exact, and towards the end of the season,
team in the Big Ten tournament, going on to win the tournament.
And listen, they lost down the stretch, but they lost to good Big Ten teams. When you look at it, they lost to Michigan, who is a spoiler alert, they're in the Final Four. They lost to Michigan State. Spoiler alert, they made it to the Elite Eight, obviously. They lost to Ohio State, which was right outside the tournament. Like they were one of the first teams out. And then they lost to Wisconsin, who turned out not being so great, but they ended up being a 5 seed.
4 tournament teams right there.
Yeah, but they lost to all good teams down the stretch of it. So, it's not like they lost to scrubs. It's not like, oh my God, Purdue completely collapsed towards the end there.
Right.
And you have to really think, if Purdue had won 1 or 2 more of those games, plus the Big Ten tournament, they would be a 1 seed right now.
Right.
You would have taken a look at them, and you would have taken a look at Florida, and you would have said, okay, it's Purdue.
Yep.
If Purdue was a 6-loss team, it would have been Purdue. But unfortunately, that's not what we live in. And the way Purdue played in the first half against one of the best teams in the country in Arizona, I truly believe if they were in the region that Florida was in, they would have played Illinois. I think they would have beaten Illinois. Just food for thought.
Yeah, maybe. I think for Purdue also, you're losing a lot of that talent now because they were able to keep a lot of their big players, including Braden Smith, of course, from that team that went to the national championship game just a couple seasons ago. But yeah, they're going to have a new look identity, it feels like, in a way, next season. Matt Painter and company will have to do a big-time job with the transfer portal. We talked about that with St. John's earlier. They're going to have to do the exact same thing. But Purdue will have an interesting look next season.
And shout out Staten Island legend Liam Murphy, representing the borough well for such a high major team. Again, we've had other kids from the boroughs and guys in the boroughs go play in March Madness, but they're usually playing on a Siena. They're playing on a St. Peter's, a mid-major type of feel. But Liam Murphy, even though he only got really reserve minutes at Purdue, he was battling injury throughout the year, never really got into rhythm. But hey, to have that kind of March experience to go to an Elite Eight team, no one could say anything to him. So
right now,
big shout out to him.
And he got a Big Ten championship too along the way with it towards the
Yeah,
end of
great
his
career.
yeah, very good career for him. And then the second matchup on Saturday for the Elite Eight, you had an all Big Ten matchup. The 9 seeded Hawkeyes of Iowa, the 3 seeded Illini of Illinois. It was a 4 point lead for Iowa going into halftime. Ben Sturts was incredible in the first half for Iowa, a huge reason why they were winning. But Illinois, they did something that Arizona did basically earlier on in the day, and or I should say later on in the day, because that game was second out of the two. But it was just second half adjustments. Iowa really could not shoot down the stretch of this game. I think the last 10 minutes they were really struggling to score any type of points, and Illinois took advantage of it. Keaton Wagler, incredible game, 25 points. Stojakovic also was big for this team down the stretch of this year, and in this game too. And Illinois goes back to the Final Four for the first time, I believe, since they went to the national championship game in 2005. I'd have to fact check that. I probably should have done that, before we started. But I believe this is their first time they're back in the Final Four since they played for the national championship when they had Deron Williams and company at the helm. So good job for the Illini. What were your thoughts on this game?
Hell of a season by Iowa. And Illinois was a team, another popular team a lot of people picked earlier in the year. And here they are in the Final Four. So Illinois was a team that I think wasn't going to make the Final Four. I thought they could go a little deep in the March, but you know, it's a good story for them. In Iowa, they have a lot to be proud of this year. They took this program, and no shade at Fran McCaffrey here. In one season, they have gone far. You'd rather have this one season for an Iowa fan than the last 15 years of Iowa
Yeah.
basketball beforehand.
Yeah, no question. No question about it. I also want to note, I forgot 2022 they made the Final Four. Sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
I knew Brad Underwood. I knew how to make one.
Yeah, I was before 2022. That was the last time they made it. I forgot about the. I think that was Kofi Cockburn years.
Yes, sir.
I believe that was when they made it. Yes, so almost got it right. But yes, this will be an opportunity for Illinois to maybe get back to the national championship game, and that would be the first time since 2005 that they would do so. So the Illini have the chance, but you're right. Good season for Iowa. No one really expected them to even get to the Elite Eight. They were one of those Big Ten teams that were fighting to make it as a tournament team because there was just so much, bubble around the back end of the Big Ten. The Iowas, the Ohio States. You had the Indianas of just to note a couple teams like, and Iowa was not only able to beat the defending champion Florida, they had to get past Clemson in the first round. They then got past Nebraska, and they were battling with Illinois for a little bit in this game before they fell down the last 10 minutes of this matchup. So incredible year for Iowa. We'll see where they go because remember Bennett Sturts is gone after this year, so they will have to find a new face.
All-time assist leader, by the way.
Yes. And then Johnson.
I'm sorry, not Bennett Sturts, the Purdue point guard.
Yeah, Braden Smith. I know you're talking
Braden
about.
Smith. My bad.
Yeah. Then let's talk about the Sunday matchups. We'll go into Michigan's first because, they just dominated Tennessee. Tennessee gets back to the Elite Eight, but they just had no chance in this game against Michigan. They look like a well-oiled machine right now. Lendenberg again had a monster game. It was over at halftime, realistically. It was a 22-point Michigan halftime lead. And Michigan wins easily 95-62. They go back to the Final Four. They will take on Arizona, which we'll preview in just a little bit of time. But any comments on this game? I know it wasn't really much to talk about, but it was just a dominant performance for Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan was my preseason team to look out for to make the national championship game, and here they are now. And let's be real. Michigan team is filled with grown men. Laxell Lendenberg is almost 24 years old. Despite, he's a senior, he's a super senior, whatever. You have two juniors that are over 21 years old that are in Ellie Cadeau and Ade Maurer. And you have almost a 21-year-old sophomore in Maurice Johnson.
Right.
So this is a team filled with grown men. And when they played a traditional basketball game against a team that's not filled with grown men, it's what you got. You can't really be surprised.
Yeah, I think Lendenberg, right, was in the same recruiting class as guys like Kate Cunningham and
Jalen
Jalen
Green.
Green. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like some of the a
Lendenberg
couple
could have went to
lottery
the
picks.
NBA last year. He would have been a top 20 pick, and that's why it was very surprising when he actually stayed with Michigan
Yeah,
or
and
transferred to Michigan
yeah,
because he came
yeah,
over from UAB. But
yeah. Well, now
cool.
his stock continues to go up potentially, and with a national championship, that could certainly help his case
The
as
only
well.
thing wrong with his game is his age.
Right.
Think about it. He's a 6'10" power forward. He could shoot well, so if he gets a little bit faster on the perimeter, he could defend and be a small forward, be one of those larger small forwards that the OG Ananobi type or the you know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's big enough where he can defend the four. He's certainly strong enough where he can defend the four. He shoots well. He rebounds well. He blocks, steals, defends. He can pass the ball. He's great from the line. He really has no weakness in his game outside he's old.
I think that the only thing I have left from this game it's two anti SEC one
Oh, I'm
stats
glad you brought it up.
because I know you love these stats
I was gonna
and
do it, but I'll let you. You can
I
do the
let's
honors.
see if it's the same one. So the SEC, if you combine the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament and the college football playoff combined, the SEC was 0-6 against the Big Ten this season.
And I'm a big fan of SEC football, but I'm gonna start. If this happens one more time, I'm gonna start buying the rumors
I
that
know the Big Ten's a better
since
conference.
no, but now since everyone can pay for their players, it doesn't really look that great for the SEC because it was all over rumors for years that they're paying players under the table. So like now that everyone can pay for their players, it's not looking great.
Now here's the stat I think that you would like the most. The SEC sent 10 teams into the round of 64
Yep,
in this
here it
tournament.
is.
There is not a single SEC team left going into the Final Four.
That's crazy. How about the ACC, Nick?
Well, it looked like the ACC was in good hands, Johnson, for a second for Duke because they were dominating UConn in the first half of this game. They were up by as many as 19 at one point. They had a 15-point lead going into halftime against the Huskies in their Elite Eight matchup. And if you look at the stat, and I'll keep going to more stats in this about this tournament. One seeds going into halftime up 15 points were 134-0 in NCAA tournament history. There is now a 1 at the end of that mark. UConn, an incredible shooting performance for them in the second half. Duke just, I couldn't even tell you what happened for them offensively in the second half. It's as if everything that was clicking for them in the first half. Boozer, I think, had 20 points going into halftime. I think he finished just 7 in the second half. And it was just an all-time joke job. I'll ask you, we'll get to the moment in a second, so I'll ask you at the end of it. But Duke has a 19-point lead, 17-point lead at one point in the second half, and towards the end they're up by like 4 with under a minute to go. It looks like it's still over. UConn goes 1 for 2 at the free throw line with about 10 seconds left. They're down 2. Duke inbounds the ball. They're trying to get it up court so that they can force a lot more clock off. They turn the ball over. UConn gets it back. It's a pass to Mullins, and Braylon Mullins, the freshman, knocks down the game-winning 3 with 0.4 left on the clock. UConn stuns Duke 73-72 to advance to the Final Four. Here's my question, Johnson. Which was a worse choke job for Duke these last 2 years? This one or the one last year where they were up 6 with a minute left against Houston?
This is way worse.
You think, I think
You can't listen. 6 points with a minute to go is not that much in a college basketball game. Because 6 points in a game with a minute to go, you could probably think of a dozen games during the regular season where that happens. You see it happen all the time, Nick. You see teams hit a three, get a turnover, pass it out, hit a three again, all in 45 seconds to tie it up. It's not that uncommon. The way basketball has evolved, we routinely see 9-0 runs in basketball almost every game. And they usually happen in about a minute to a minute and 20 seconds. So that is not that bad. That to me is, you can make a basket, get a stop, make a basket, and then foul. They miss one free throw. You get a 30 to tie the game. It's improbable, yes, but it's way possible. to blow a 20 or 19-point lead, to be exact, where you're controlling the pace of play. Tarris Reed is in foul trouble. There's multiple guys on UConn that's in foul trouble.
Yeah, Karabad not having a really strong game shooting wise.
Yeah,
At one
Karabad
point,
didn't do anything.
UConn, if I'm not mistaken, I remember at one point in this game, I think UConn was like 1 of 16 from the 3-point line. Like, they
They
could
were
not
one of 18.
1 of 18.
And this,
Yeah,
I
they
think
could
either
not make
one
a
of
shot.
18 or one of 17. And
Yeah,
I said the second that popped up, I'm like, Duke has lost this game. Only because I said this UConn team is not going to go 1 for 18 on threes or 1 for 17 on threes. It's not going to happen. They're going to start falling for them. And what happened from that point, Nick? They went 3 or 4 from downtown when it was already like a 10-point game. And then the icing on the cake was when Mullins hit that 36-foot long bomb to stun Duke after a Cameron Boozer to Caden Boozer turnover.
yeah. No,
And
yeah. Caden Boozer was one that turned it over. Yeah,
yeah, it was Cameron threw it to Caden, and Caden threw it, obviously turned it
yeah.
over.
I think he was trying to get it to. I want to say it was Malik Brown the other end, and the pass was just tipped. I think by Mullins himself, and then they were able to force the shot at the end of it, and it was one where Isaiah Evans, who we just mentioned before with the St. John's game, an incredible performance against St. John's, but he doesn't put a hand up on the defensive end, which was a crazy thing to do that late in the game. Not even contest the shot. He also did not have a strong game either offensively, just 7 points in that game. Foster, who we talked about in the St. John's game too, he only had one shot attempt in this game, 0 points. You could tell the injury was still obviously playing a factor, especially after
St.
playing.
John. Listen, he brought his A
days
game
before.
of St. John's, like it always
Yeah.
happens. Happened with Kentucky early in the year when Jaden Quinton's played.
And I think the reason for that is I watched a video about this, and I think it speaks to how St. John's was this season. Also, I don't want to really make it about us in that point, but in terms of how the press defense is for St. John's, you needed Foster in that game because if not Foster not playing that game, then you find a situation where those guys are going to be more immune to turning the ball over on an inbounds pass. And with Foster in, you're not going to see that very often in this game. But I also saw someone saying on Twitter how St. John's helped UConn in a way being Duke because if you having to play a team that many times, 3 times in the season, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. And you're facing a Duke team that's been strong defensively throughout the entire season in this tournament too. And you got to think that, despite the 19-point deficit, the 17-point second half deficit, the, down late in the game, and it looked like they were going to have to force turnover or fouls and hope for missed free throws just to have a chance. That competition like that definitely helped UConn win this type of a game. And in doing so, it did, because now UConn gets the Final Four matchup with Illinois, which it didn't look like was possible as that game was progressing. And yeah, it's just an incredible choke job by Duke. Duke, remember, had that stat also on Friday where every year they beat St. John's and won a national championship. That also got broken with this loss to UConn.
I hate stats like that. Those are Those are like I call them astrology stats.
I know. But hey, if I'm trying to somewhat put a positive spin on what was an incredible year, you know it's an incredible year for us. But if there was any solace, even though UConn, we're not big fans of them, at least it was Duke that was the one that was choking like this. No offense to any Duke fans. It's just they're the type of team like, the Yankees of the MLB world, I guess Dodgers now also of the MLB world. Like the team that you don't root for unless you're from that state or from that city. Like you don't root for this team outside of that.
This is my thing. Okay, with Duke, right? I don't necessarily hate the team. I hate the fan base. And when I say I hate the fan base,
yeah,
I hate that here's the thing, Nick. This is gonna sound crazy. Duke alumni, and this is straight from the website, they have approximately 200,000 alumni, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of alumni for a small private college. in North Carolina. You know what St. John's alumni is?
Go ahead.
You know the total number of St. John's
No,
alumni, Nick?
I couldn't even try to guess.
Well, they have a global network of about 190,000, and that was in 2020. So you've already had many graduating classes since there. It's over 200,000 now because they're averaging about 4 or 5,000 a year. So you're probably talking two and a quarter right now. That's not including grad. That's two and a quarter including for grad students. How many St. John's hoodies would you see in Los Angeles? How many St. John's hoodies would you see? And this could be any state university. It could be Florida State. It could be, Texas or Texas A&M. I'm trying to think of other brands of universities that are pretty big. They have large alumni networks. And St. John's is a mid-sized college. They have two. I'm just using St. John's not because we're Johnny's, but because it's a similar size. But the basketball brand could be different.
Right.
Where you have Duke has these fans, right? And they're not from North Carolina, and they did not go there, and their relationship is, oh well, my cousin's uncle's brother's dog.
Yeah, it's like Notre
walked
Dame
on campus.
It's like Notre Dame of football.
Notre Dame, I kind of get because there's the whole Catholic thing.
Right, but not everyone.
Duke does not have that.
No, I get that, but not everyone goes to Notre Dame. Like they just say the exact same thing, like you said. They're like, "Oh yeah, I have a cousin's brother, sister," like type of that, like that type of stuff.
And listen, Notre Dame is a large school. I get it. And you know what? Even if you're a Notre Dame fan, I'm even consider you a bandwagon because they haven't done anything in 50 years.
Yeah.
That's the God's honest truth.
Right.
Duke is winning national championships almost before this year. It was like every 5 to 10 years.
Right.
But now it's been 10 years since they've even been to the big game.
Yeah. I think 2015 was the last time?
Yeah, the Duke.
That was the last time they won.
Yeah, so the last time they won a championship, the Duke freshman class was in the second grade.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Again, a storied basketball program that has 200,000 alumni. I'm not saying that's not a lot of people. 200,000 people. That's 4 football stadiums, depending on the size. Maybe 3. I'm not. Yeah, it's crazy to me that I don't want to call it a cult, but like you have these fans that are so passionate they have no connection to the place.
Well, even think about the players that they've had these last decade, and they have not been able to win a championship since that's happened.
They've had 36 5-stars in that time period.
Right, and think of some of these guys that are current. Some guys in the NBA, some of them current, stars in the NBA. Guys like Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson. You have Cooper Flag,
RJ Barrett. You have everyone.
Paulo Banchero. Boozer, of course, will be in the draft at some point this year. RJ Barrett, you mentioned. Cam Reddish, that incredible season with Barrett and Williamson. Con Knipple, who might win the Rookie of the Year this year. If not him, it's going to be Cooper Flag. Jared McCain, Derek Lively, Marvin Bagley, Wendell Carter, Gary Trent, Luke Kennard, Grayson Allen. Just some of those names, like they're part of a lot of.
Here's my question to you now, because I made this question to you off the air, and then obviously Davis got fired, right, from North Carolina.
Hubert Davis,
yeah, Hubert Davis got fired.
Which funny enough, which is kind of, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just kind of ironic that UNC had a 19-point lead in the second at one point in their game. They choked, and then Duke did the same thing. But continue.
So here's my thing with Jon Scheyer. He's been to the Final Four and 2 Elite Eights, right? Yeah. He obviously has very good faith right now. It's not like Hubert Davis, where he made the national championship game and then it was a steady trend down. Right now,
he's won 70 games? No, not 70 games. I'm sorry. How many games has he won at Duke since he became the coach?
124.
Yeah, okay.
So he's won 100. He's winning a lot. He has an 83% win percentage. Yeah. But if I tell you 3 years from or 2, if we're talking 2 years from now, and Duke has a round of 32 appearance next year, and then they get upset in the round of 64, do you think any doubt creeps into their minds about Jon Scheyer? Because you said he's had these fantastic teams since being there. He had Cooper Flag and Con Knipple last year. 2 great NBA players, definitely top 100 right now.
Yeah.
As rookies, right? And they couldn't get it done.
Well,
you have a loaded class this year.
Yeah.
and you couldn't get it done. So if they have a couple of bad years, Nick, like does it really creep into you? Does it creep into mind just a little bit that maybe he's not the
Yeah.
guy?
No, I agree with you. This is
Right
why.
now, I'm not saying he's definitely a seat. It's not hot whatsoever. It is cool as can be, but
Yeah,
this is what
you
kind of
have to get it
plants
done
the
at some
seeds,
point.
though. This plants the seeds to these conversations that might happen a year or two from now.
Right. Here's what I'm going to say about that. Because you look at the last 5 losses Duke has had in the tournament also. This is another thing I saw on Twitter. First, you start with Coach K's last season. They lose to North Carolina. That you just mentioned that Hubert Davis run to the national championship game where they lost to Kansas. That was Coach K's last season. They lose in the Final Four to UNC that year. Then John Shire's first year at the helm, they get to the round of 32. They got embarrassed by Tennessee, if you remember that game in his first season. They lose by 13 points, got demolished by the Volunteers. Then the year after, they go to the Elite Eight, and you remember what happened in the Elite Eight. They lost to the team that they lost to in the ACC tournament, NC State. They were up 9 points in that game, and they just completely collapsed in that matchup with the Wolfpack. Then last year, we talked about it earlier, had the lead against Houston up as many as 14 points at one point, 6 point lead with under a minute left, and they lose that game on a team that probably should have won the national championship, considering what they've done so far in the NBA. And then this season, the number one overall seed, they were up 19 points in this game against UConn, up 4 with under 30 seconds left, and it just inconceivable that how they lose this game. And you're right. There's no question Shire's not on the hot seat right now. But if they continue to collapse and choke these next couple seasons, like there's going to be definitely some doubt starting to brew in for some of the Blue Devil fans as to is he really going to be that guy that gets us our first championship in over a decade? So I agree with it. I 100% agree with it. And I don't know if you've seen the rumors with the North Carolina job. I'll talk. Maybe I don't know if I want to say it on the air
I
because
will.
I
The
might not.
rumor I saw
Yeah, go on.
was that Rick Pitino was approached that for it. I think a lot of guys were, and that might have
I
been that was one of the rumors I did see.
So I saw that. I've also heard Tommy Lloyd, who's got Arizona
I
in the
saw
Final
that as
Four,
well.
is right on being considered. And for what I saw in this press conference after, I don't know. It seems like there's a possibility that could happen. It would be tough because he's got Arizona in a great spot right now, but it might be tough to pass the Tar Heel Blue. I don't know. It'd be interesting if he was in the same conference with Shire and Duke. That would lead to some very interesting matchups over the next course of years. But getting ahead of ourselves, Johnson, we'll talk about any if that does happen. Maybe during our next pod when we recap the Final Four and the national championship game. And speaking of the Final Four, let's go into our last mushing hour of the NCAA college basketball season. 2 games in the Final Four. You and I will make our predictions for those Final Four games, and then we'll make a prediction on who will win the national championship. Last year, you and I both had Duke. Obviously, they had that choke job against Houston, so we'll see if we get the job done this time around. Can we get the right national championship this year? I think you and I both agree that the champion's going to come in one specific game. But before we get to that game, let's talk about the first game. Number 3, Illinois, the champions of their region. I'm already blanking over the region. I probably already said it multiple times. That was the not West, right? Arizona was the West.
For South.
South, yes. Struggling. Yeah, Yukon East, Michigan Midwest, Arizona West, and Illinois from the South. So the champs of the South, Illinois, the 3 seed taking on the number 2 seed Yukon Huskies of the East region. It is Illinois minus 2.5. The over under 139.5. Do you have that strategy that you used last week?
No, I'm gonna throw that out. I
You
went
gonna throw that
four and
out?
four. I went 4-4 on spreads, but overall, it only got 2 games wrong, which was the Iowa State game and the I don't think actually just the Iowa State game is the only one that it said that I got wrong. But spreads it went 4-4, and then straight up it went 7-1. Also picking the Iowa game, which picked Iowa and Illinois straight up, which are probably the 2 hardest ones to do. But I'm gonna go based off a hunch here, and my hunch is UConn won't stay this hot forever. Give me the Illini
Mm.
and the all those Slavic players on Illinois. It's really good camaraderie if you see that. I didn't think I'd ever see a bunch of players from Serbia and everywhere in the Balkans, Greece, everywhere, just lighting up teams on national television in March Madness. I would have never guessed that a day in my life. So give me the Illini to cover here. Give me Illinois -2.5.
This has been tough because Illinois has been a really strong defensive team in this tournament, and they're taking on UConn that has had its up and downs in terms of shooting in this tournament. And when they need the shot, make a big shot, they made the big shot. Caravan against Michigan State, Mullins, of course, against Duke. Can they keep that going? I'm going to take them to cover the 2.5. As much as I hate to say it, I maybe I'm just doing that to try to jinx it or not, but I just think, despite on paper it looking like maybe Illinois is the better team, there's just something about UConn right now that unfortunately makes me a little bit worried. So I think they get to cover the 2.5, and I think they go to the national championship game next Monday night.
Also, something to look out for, Nick. I've seen rumors that the son of Peja Stojakovic, Andrei Stojakovic,
Yes.
is rumored to be leaving Illinois, that he might be going to the transfer portal. So we'll see if maybe winning a national title here will change his mind.
By the way, does it suck to be a California fan seeing Stojakovic lead Illinois to the Final Four, and you just watch Fernando Mendoza leading Indiana to a national championship?
Yeah, I mean, it could be Stanford too,
Tough.
because he started in Stanford.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, they have he's Greek and he's Serbian, and then you have players from Croatia and Montenegro, and like it is crazy.
Yeah, Underwood's done a fantastic job since taking over at Illinois. He's got them now in the Final Four once again, and potentially in the national championship game for the first time since 2005. And if they were to get to the national championship game, Johnson, they would have to take on either number 1 seed Michigan or number 1 seed Arizona. I think you and I both agree that this is probably the true national championship game, but it's not for the national championship. It is Michigan -1.5. 157.5 is the over-under.
Yeah, give me Michigan here. This has been my team all year. Michigan -1.5. I don't care what the analytics say. I have to write of this team. I said in November this team would be playing for national championship, and now they're one game away. So I feel like I can't stray away with it. So give me Michigan -1.5.
Well, my pick pre-tournament was Arizona to win the national championship. My pick at the preseason, I was with you on Michigan as well. So kind of caught in a pickle with these two teams in terms of who gets the national championship game. I think I'm going to lean towards Michigan. And I'm going to veer away from my pre-tournament championship pick. I'll take Michigan to cover the 1.5. This is going to be an incredible game regardless. I think this is going to come down to the wire. It's going to lead to another incredible moment we've had this tournament. And I think no matter who wins this game, it's no discredit to Illinois or UConn, but I think whoever wins this game wins the national championship, in my opinion. I think these are the two best teams in the country. They have done it for a majority of the season. I think whoever wins gets the job done and wins the national championship on Monday. So, with that being said, I will go back to my preseason pick, and I have Michigan defeating UConn in the national championship. And that would mean that you would have your all Big Ten championship matchup, Illinois and Michigan. You have Michigan, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be incredible. And a chance for either Illinois or Michigan, Johnson. If you remember, they would be the first Big Ten team to win the national championship in, 25, 26 years? I think Michigan State was the last one.
Has it been that long for a Big Ten national championship?
I believe so.
Because Baylor was Big 12, and they were a while before that.
Yeah, I believe that would be the first time since 2000 where Michigan State, I believe, won the national championship.
I think you're right. Unless was Maryland the ACC back then?
They were ACC, yeah.
They were still ACC.
Or they no, they were never Big East. No, they were never Big East.
No, they were never Big East. But I was trying to think when they went over there. But yeah, if it's not Maryland, if they were still ACC at the time, then it's been 2000.
Yep, the last time a Big Ten team won the national championship was 2000 Michigan State, and then prior to that, it was 1989 Michigan. So it has been a long time since the Big Ten has had a national champion in college basketball, and they'll be sending two teams to the Final Four. And I made the note to you also that pre-tournament, I somehow got 3 of the 4 teams right, but before we even had a bracket, couldn't even tell you how I did that. I think you had 2 out of 4, which is not bad either.
No, I'll definitely take that.
And unfortunately, when we made our actual tournament picks, we both had Houston in the national championship. That didn't go over so well.
So. Yeah, just very shocking to see them not make it out of the South when
it was right there for them. It was right there for them. But yeah, that's going to be our second to last pod of the year for college basketball, Johnson. The next one we do is next week when we recap the Final Four and then recap the national championship game that takes place next Monday night. And then for us, in terms of programming notes for the next couple of weeks, after that, I believe, Johnson, I think you and I talked about this before we started our recording tonight. The next time you and I will be on the air after college basketball over, I believe you and I will be back into the world of wrestling. I think we're going to be talking about WrestleMania that's coming up in a couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to that.
Then we have the NBA playoffs on the horizon too, and then we have the NFL draft also on the horizon. So a lot to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. But as I mentioned earlier on, tough time because unfortunately college basketball is coming to an end and what has been a truly incredible college basketball season this year. Any final thoughts, Johnson, before I wrap this one up?
Take us home.
I'll take us home. That will do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. We are down to the final 4 teams in this year's college basketball season. It will start on Saturday night. 2 games on Saturday night. You have first, number 3 Illinois, number 2 UConn. The winner of that game will take on number 1 Michigan or number 1 Arizona in next Monday night's national championship game. Next week, Johnson and I will recap those 2 Final Four matchups, and then we will recap the national championship game next week here on the show. And then, as I mentioned, after that, we'll have WrestleMania talk, NBA playoff talk, and NFL draft talk in the next couple of weeks. So looking forward to all of that coverage over the course of time. For Nicholas Pavona and Andrew Johnson, this has been the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.